Thank you, Deborah. And welcome everybody again to our third virtual session of BusinessWise Insiders. Once again, given the large number of attendees, one moment. Sorry, one second. I'm going to take the liberty of muting you all just to keep things moving so we can get through the presentation and move on to the breakout sessions. But as Deborah mentioned, and I've mentioned in the past, the primary goal of BusinessWise Insiders is to give you all a chance to meet and learn from each other. So at the end of the presentation, like we have the last two sessions, we'll split into breakout rooms where you'll have the chance to introduce yourself, ask any questions, and offer your own insights on the topic. And if you do have a question during the presentation, either write it down or feel free to ask it in the chat window. And then during the breakout sessions, we'll try and discuss as many of those as possible. And I'll try to keep things moving at a steady pace so we can spend as much time discussing today's topic and engaging with each other. And that brings us to today's topic, which is how to build your value proposition and use it at every step of your business development. Some of you might be wondering exactly what a value proposition is, because it is admittedly a somewhat jargony term. And we'll get into the nuts and bolts in this presentation, but I thought it would be worth starting with a very simple definition we can all have in our minds at the outset. So very basically, your value proposition is how you communicate your unique value to your prospects and customers. It articulates to your prospects why they should do business with you. And a big reason we thought it was important to offer this as a topic right now is that whether consciously or not, pretty much every business owner, sales rep, and marketer has been doing a lot of thinking about value propositions lately. With the events of the past few months, the idea of what businesses offer and what customers want and need has undergone a major shift, and businesses are working to redefine what they offer, to redefine their value in order to chart a new path forward. But before a business can redefine itself, it needs to define itself, to examine what your core value proposition is and how effectively you've been communicating that value proposition to your prospects. So what do you say when your prospect or customer wonders, why should I say yes to your call, email, meeting, or product? And it seems like the one question every sales rep should be ready to answer, but so many really struggle with it. And the answer to that question is, in essence, your value proposition. So value proposition, again, is a concise, direct statement that speaks to a specific group of people, your ideal prospects, clearly identifies the benefits consumers receive when acting on your offer, demonstrates your difference, so your prospects will say yes to you rather than to somebody else, and more importantly, guides every aspect of your biz dev strategy from prospecting to cold calling to email marketing. So this just isn't just a statement at the end of the process where you're communicating to a prospect why they should buy from you, or even at the very beginning where you're telling them who you are and what you offer. It's really something you use at every step of the way to nurture prospects from consideration all the way to a sale. And another way of looking at it is the four elements of a successful value proposition are appeal, so why your prospects want something; exclusivity, the fact that they can't get it anywhere else; credibility, they believe in it and you; and clarity, they understand it and you. And some of you may have heard of Flint McLaughlin and Mech Labs, but if you haven't, they're an organization that performs in-depth research into the science of marketing. And several years ago, Dr. McLaughlin came up with what he called a value proposition question. And this is another more precise way of prompting you to define your unique value. And so we're going to use that today to break down the concept of a value proposition so you can rebuild it and use it to power your business development. So the three elements of this question are, if I am your ideal prospect, why should I say yes to you rather than your competitors? And before we go into each section of this, I just want to invite Deborah to offer any additional thoughts, if she has any.
Thanks, Sam. So as we go through this today, we're going to, as Sam mentioned, we're going to be talking about a value proposition in different instances. So sometimes it has to do with whether somebody's going to respond to your email or agree to speak with you on the phone. Sometimes it's sign on the dotted line. And all of those things are important. And I think we need to think about them in different ways. One of the things that I notice is that if anybody or if most salespeople have worked on their value proposition, it usually has to do with the value of their product or service. Critical, important, and I'm glad that you're working on that. What's often missing is that first step of why should somebody meet with you even if they don't plan on doing business with you. And that's a very different value proposition. So I want everybody to be thinking of both of those things today.
Thanks, Deborah. And that brings us to the first step in building your value proposition, which is to speak to your best prospects. And as Deborah mentioned, and Doug helpfully complemented it in our introduction, BusinessWise is really in the business of helping people connect with their ideal target market of high value prospects. And if you've ever been inside a BusinessWise office, you may have seen a jar of Jelly Bellies. And there's actually a story behind it. We use them to illustrate the importance of zooming in on your favorite flavors or best prospects for more efficient and successful new business development. The idea being you only like red and green jelly beans. It's not that efficient to grab a whole handful and pick through all the ones you don't like. It's much more effective and efficient to sort them out and only eat the ones that you like, or only talk to and connect with the prospects who are ready to do business with you. And that's really what the first critical piece of the value proposition is all about. If I am your ideal prospect. So here you have a group of prospects saying, we are your ideal prospects. We are the most likely to benefit from what you offer. And when your value proposition speaks to us, your message is more focused and relevant. And of course, we're firm believers at BusinessWise in the importance of a defined and focused target market, but not just because it leads to more efficient and effective business development and delivers high value leads. Almost as importantly, defining your audience can help you sharpen your message. That is, when you speak to a specific group of prospects with specific problems and priorities that you can help address, your message is sharper and will resonate a lot more successfully. So before you even think about what you want to say, you should think about who you want to say it to. And we strongly at BusinessWise recommend looking to your list of current clients as a roadmap, since your clients are by definition former prospects who decided to buy from you. So here we have the ideal prospect dartboard, and it's just a way of thinking about how to zoom in on the center of the bullseye where your highest value prospects live. So to find your ideal prospects, start with those you already know, your current clients. And just some questions you can ask: what do your existing customers look like? Are they small, medium, or large businesses? What industries do they represent? Do they own or lease their space? And as you answer these questions and refine your definition of what your ideal prospect is, you're more likely to get a group that is ready to benefit from what you offer. And then once you have a picture of the who, the demographics, you can think about the why. When you're looking for the why, dig deep to find why your customers use what you offer. The first why might be sort of on paper, but there may be another underlying reason, a real essential why of why they do business with you. Another way to look at it is to think about what job are your customers trying to do with your product. You may help people do more than one job, so it may be necessary to divide your customers into different categories. So grouping customers with similar challenges and priorities and speaking to them separately. And finally, it's always good to have any customers, but invariably some are built on stronger relationships and better fits. So think about your best customers when you're trying to come up with a roadmap to your best prospects. Deborah, I don't know if you had anything to add to that section.
Creating your target market can be a real pain, and that's why many of us don't spend enough time doing it. There are so many different criteria, and there's the likelihood of feeling like I don't want to narrow down my target because in the end, I'll do business with anybody with a heartbeat and a checkbook. At the same time, you're going to find much more success the more you can carefully target. And as Sam was pointing out before, there are a variety of ways to do that. but know that your wise guy experts will help you tremendously to come up with the right criteria and help you by going through your current client list with you, knowing how to focus on the companies that are right. So for example, you might say, well, we want to do business with the financial sector. Okay, does that mean banks? Does it also mean credit unions? And when you say banks, does it mean every branch office, or are you only looking for the headquarters? Or maybe you're only looking for the offices with the HR people, or perhaps the loan officers. Any of those things can be targeted, and we will help you do that. And that pre-planning will make a huge difference in the results of your prospecting.
Thanks, Deb. So that brings us to step 2. Now that you know who you're talking to, and obviously we gave a very quick overview of why it's important and how you can start creating that blueprint. And as Deborah mentioned, we're always happy to help. But now we can turn to working on what to say to those prospects and telling your prospects what they get. So this is the second middle piece of the value proposition question. Why should I say yes to you? And you have your prospects here emphasizing that they don't really care about your product. What they care about is their own challenges and priorities. If you tell them how you'll help them solve problems and achieve goals, then they'll have a reason to act. And this is really where the value comes in the value proposition. And the critical piece to emphasize here is that you don't define your own value, because the value you're offering isn't abstract and it isn't really about you at all. It's about your prospects and customers. So they define value in terms of their own problems and priorities. And when they perceive value that meets their definition, that's when they act. And if there's a common mistake that sales reps and marketers can't seem to avoid, and we're guilty of this more often than I'd like to admit, but it's that you talk about your own experiences, products, and services rather than the experiences, wants, and needs of your prospect. So what we like to use as a helpful device is what I'm calling here the "what's in it for me" filter that helps reframe these same ideas in a way that conveys value to your prospect. And in many cases, it's as simple as forcing yourself to communicate in the second person, using you rather than we or I. So what you have here on the left is somebody making some generic claims, but they're common, and you'll probably recognize them from communications with other businesses. We are a fantastic sales and marketing company. We have over 30 years of experience in our field. We are the industry leader in quality. When you think about it through the lens of what's in it for the prospect and rephrase it, you get much more value-oriented and effective communicating phrases like, you use our product to find and connect with your hidden local prospects. You work with an experienced team to create a biz dev strategy proven to work in your local market. And you have access to a team of local researchers for trustworthy business listings updated daily. And these are obviously related to what we offer. We know that inside and out. And so I wanted to use it as an example of how you can rephrase it from the first person to the second person. And then this, again, these statements are more about sort of an overview of what the business offers, but you can consider this same set of ideas and concepts in the context of, for example, setting a first appointment. So when a prospect seems uncertain about why they should meet with you, you can say things like, you'll get new ideas on how to solve the challenges of a poor prospect pipeline. You'll get ideas on the levers to push to gain more first-time appointments with local hidden prospects. You'll discover the dirty little secrets about national data. So starting with you and you'll is a great way to phrase it in terms that your prospect will benefit from and will resonate with them. Just a few additional key points here. Specific beats simple. It's easy to try to distill what you offer in as simplistic terms as possible. For example, simple accounting software may be a way that an accounting company describes what they do. But the more specific you are, the more it will resonate with a specific problem your prospect has. So instead of saying simple accounting software, you could say create professional looking invoices in minutes. They're both simple, but one is much more specific. Again, remember why your customers use your product, and then explain your value in those terms that are both relatable, and be sure not to overpromise, so make sure that they're attainable. And then again, the phrases your customers use to describe your product are the ones that will resonate most with other prospects. You want them to have that "you read my mind" moment. So use those same words in your value proposition. And another idea would be to reinforce it with prominent testimonials, focusing on how your customers describe why they use your product or service. Deborah, anything to add?
It helps to remember the wisdom that your customers have about you and your offerings. I'm thinking about earlier today when Doug mentioned that the important thing about going to BusinessWise is that you can find the right person that you want to talk with. And so many times, if my colleagues and I are sitting around talking about strategy of how to reach out to our prospects, we might be thinking about a zillion other bells and whistles. And yet, if we think about our clients, and maybe what Doug said or other comments our clients have made, it's really all about finding the right person to talk with quickly. So I encourage all of you to reach out to your clients, and that's sometimes a much better resource than your colleagues, because we get so focused on all the different bells and whistles that our services and products have to offer that we forget what's really important to our clients. So use your clients and their feedback as a great source of what you want to tell your prospects.
And that brings us to step 3, which is where you really elevate your value to make it unique and irresistible. And that's to be different and better. It's the third part of the value proposition question. Rather than your competitors. So why should I say yes to you rather than your competitors? If you ended the value proposition question after the word "you," so if I'm your ideal prospect, why should I say yes to you? You might think you've done a pretty good job of defining your why, but you'd be missing this critical piece. Because value alone won't get you much business if your prospects can get that same value from somewhere else. So you have the prospect on the left saying, even if you give me a reason to act, I may still be able to get the same value from someone else. On the other hand, if you explain to me why you offer unique value, you'll narrow my choices down to one, which is you. And so an easy way to double check the power of your value proposition is to ask whether your competitors can say the same thing. For every claim you make about your product, ask yourself, can my competitors say the same thing? And if the answer is yes, consider excluding it from your value proposition. So here you have on the left something that almost every business says: we offer fantastic customer service. But of course, almost every competitor can also say the same thing, which makes it a fairly weak value proposition. On the other hand, the other end of the spectrum, the more specific you are about your unique value, the better the value proposition. So again, our database includes locally researched business listings for Atlanta, Charlotte, and Dallas-Fort Worth. Nobody else can say that, and that makes for a stronger value proposition. Another way to think of it would be to say that a value proposition like "we offer fantastic customer service" is similar to "our pencils come with erasers." Now, that's sort of a glib way of talking about it. And of course, sometimes there are industry standard features that are expected and you can't avoid talking about, but don't go overboard focusing on those. And then when you do, think about what your added value is. So maybe you're in an industry where the core services are expected, so you can't avoid offering the same basic things as your competitors. But I bet that everyone here takes pride in something that sets your business apart. You don't have to offer a different product or service in order to be unique. In some industries, offering expected services in a better and unique way is what's critical. So another way to think about it might be, don't just think about your unique features, think about whether your standard features are used in a unique way. And then, as Deb suggested, ask your customers, why did you buy from us? Or why did you respond to my email? Or why did you take my call? or even most importantly, why did you agree to meet with me? All of these points are especially relevant today as businesses adapt and pivot to the current economic climate, because in many cases, the core products and services are going to remain the same, but customers are using them in a new and different way because of remote work or whatever else has changed. Deborah, anything to add?
I'm reminded of my previous career to BusinessWise, and as you probably know, we're in our 40th year. So my previous career was a really long time ago. I sold office furniture for the Ohio Desk Company, and I had a wonderful boss named Clark Briggs, who took the chance of hiring a woman to be in sales. And he apparently, before he was sales manager at the Ohio Desk Company, he sold appliances. Now, I don't know how long refrigerators have been invented, but I do know it's a long time. And that light in the refrigerator has been with us for many, many years. But he used to tell a story that when he'd have a couple in looking to buy a new refrigerator, that he would look at the couple and say, do you ever wake up in the middle of the night wanting a snack? And when he got a positive glint in their eye, he would go on to tell the story about how they would be coming downstairs and the house would be quiet and dark, and they'd be hesitant to turn on a light, and they'd walk into the kitchen and open the refrigerator, and there was the light showing the leftovers from tonight's dinner that they were going to snack on. And it was such a wonderful story because the fact of the matter was that every refrigerator you could buy had a light in it. But when he would tell the story, it would involve the buyers, and oftentimes they would go ahead and purchase the refrigerator that had the light inside. So I think this is a great highlight into what Sam was saying. So even if you don't have unique features, you always have you, and you're certainly a unique feature. You also have a story to tell, or several stories to tell, that engage your buyers.
Thanks, Deb. And that brings us to step 4. And so up to this point, we've been covering a mostly fairly abstract set of concepts, thinking about what your business offers and what makes it different. And a value proposition considered in those terms seems maybe most practical for like an elevator pitch or when you're put on the spot at a networking event. But boosting your biz dev with your value proposition is where it really has practical value, and where you can see that these concepts aren't just abstract and they can really help in every phase of prospecting and sales. And again, as Deborah mentioned, and as I talked about at the beginning of the presentation, your value proposition isn't just about that ultimate decision your prospect makes to buy from you or not. It's critical at every stage, from the very first time you reach out to a prospect on the phone or via email. So here we have the whole value proposition. The prospect are saying, now that you have it ready, share it with us at every chance you get. If we don't see your unique value in every interaction, we'll walk right by. And another way to think about it is that you have an umbrella value proposition. So why should your prospects do business with you? And it might be the subheader on your website or on your marketing materials for a networking event. But then underneath that, you have a whole bunch of smaller, more distinct value propositions that sort of dovetail off of your umbrella value proposition. More than just why should I buy from you? Why should prospects open your emails? Why should prospects click, call, or reply? Why should prospects share their problems and priorities with you? Why should they take your call? Why should they agree to meet with you, even if they're not going to do business with you, or even if that's a possibility? And then, of course, the final one, why should they make that decision to buy? And in fact, you can modify the value proposition question to help you customize your core value proposition for the situation. So rather than if I am your ideal prospect, why should I buy from you rather than your competitors? Think about it as if I am a specific prospect, why should I take your action rather than some other action? Some examples might be, if I'm a prospect who doesn't know about you, why should I take your call rather than hang up? If I'm a prospect who doesn't know about you, why should I click on your email rather than delete it? If I am a prospect who you've spoken with, why should I agree to your meeting rather than explore other options? Or if I'm a prospect in a given industry, why should I attend your event rather than pass up the invitation? Just a reminder that there are value propositions in every action, and every prospect is constantly considering the relative value versus the cost. And here's sort of a life cycle of a value proposition, because what it really does is serve as the force that propels your prospect up and down your sales funnel. So at every stage, the perceived value must outweigh the perceived cost. So if you start out with an email, you need to give your prospect a reason to respond by explaining the benefits of your offer. In cold calling, when you get a prospect on the phone, starting a sentence with "the reason I called" is a great way to set yourself up to describe the value you're offering in inviting them to have a conversation or a meeting. In an appointment, sell your prospects on the opportunity to exchange ideas, no strings attached. And this is something we're going to talk more about in the breakout rooms. You know, how to explain to a prospect that there's value in a meeting, even if the ultimate result is they do not do business with you. And then finally, of course, the sale, highlighting the cost of not acting and show why your solution is unique. And again, thinking about this, about how to explain benefits of an appointment, you get new ideas on how to solve challenges. You get ideas on the levers to push to gain more first-time appointments with hidden prospects, explaining the value of a conversation in terms of the ideas that somebody might get. And then just some key points, making sure your value proposition is front and center in everything you do, whether it's on your website or in an email or in a physical piece of marketing materials or just in a conversation, always thinking about making it clear and obvious to your prospect. Again, creating a core value proposition, but modifying it for different settings. And then another way of thinking about it at every stage is to ask yourself these 4 questions: why act, why now, why us, and why trust? Any final thoughts, Deb?
So if you find yourself saying either verbally or in writing to your prospects, "I'd really love to meet with you to find out more about your business and to see if we can help," please rethink, because that's all about you. Of course, you'd love to meet with your prospects, then you'd have a chance to sell something. That doesn't help your prospect. Of course, you'd like to find out more about their business, but they already know quite a bit about their business. And of course, you want to sell something. Well, so does your prospect. So meeting with you might not help them sell more. Please rethink. There are good reasons for your prospects to want to meet with you. We just need to figure out how to communicate that. And we're ready to help you do that.
Thanks, Deb. That's a good segue, because in just a moment, we're going to split up into our breakout sessions and we can have a back and forth conversation about that and more. We're going to have a couple of each of our own business development experts from Atlanta, Dallas, and Charlotte in each room to help lead the discussion and answer any questions. I'm going to allow everybody to unmute themselves in a moment, and you'll be able to unmute yourself as soon as you enter a breakout room in any case. But if you could just please wait a moment, I'm going to make sure that the right people are in the right rooms, and I will introduce the hosts to get things started. Thank you, everybody, again, and we'll see you guys in the breakout rooms.
Thank you, Sam.